Okay, there was part of our success criteria that says how to use the graph of a quadratic function to answer questions. And we're going to use examples from the book. So we're going to go to example 3 and example 4. Okay, now let us read. The function d is equals to 4t squared. It represents the distance d in meters. So d is on my y-axis. That a race car will travel over t seconds. So t is my x-axis with a constant acceleration of 8 meters per second. Graph the function. Then use the graph to find how much time it will take for the race car to travel 200 meters. So for me to find the race car, how much it will take, how much time it will take for it to travel 200 meters, I should know 200 meters is on my y-axis. So, because they already drew the graph for me, I will go on the y-axis at 200. After I go to the y-axis at 200, I take my ruler and draw a straight line to the graph. Once it touches the graph, I take my ruler and draw a straight line down to the x-axis. And the number I find there will be the time, because the question says, then use the graph to find how much time. So, according to my graph, the time is 7. But before you go to the graph, they say graph the function. So we've already filled the function table. Now, why we cannot use negative numbers over here? Because time will never be negative. So don't start with negative 3, 4, no. You just do positive numbers because time cannot be negative. So once you draw your function table, from your function table you fill your graph. From your graph, you use the graph to answer the question that has been asked. So the answer for this question is 7 seconds. And then you write, the car will travel 200 meters after about 7 seconds. Remember, one of our success criteria was to answer all parts of the question and to answer in a complete sentence. So this question has 2 parts. Graph the function. For you to graph the function, you need a table and you need a graph. Then you'd have done that first part. Then use the graph to find how much time. That is the second part. So this is the second part. So this question has 2 parts. Graphing the function, which means table and graph. And then using the graph to answer the question. So that's how you see the dotted line from 200, and then you get the x number when you come down with your ruler, and then you answer in a complete sentence. Let's look at example 4. The function h equals to 0.6 d squared represents the distance d in miles you can see from a height of h feet. Graph this function. So this is part 1. Then use the graph to estimate how far you could see from a hot air balloon 1,000 feet. So this is part 2. Okay? So I need to go 1,000 feet on my graph and then see how high I can see. So when I graph this function, I draw my 3 columns. Okay? And then why am I using 0? Because distance can never be 0. This d is on x and h is on y. So then use the graph to estimate how far you can see from a hot air balloon. Okay? So now I do my table. I use positive values. So now, as you can see, the person chose numbers that go by 10, and some numbers by 5. So this way, they can only plot whole numbers, okay? It is easier to plot whole numbers than it is to plot decimals. Okay, so now once you make your table and you've discovered you cannot use negative numbers because your D stands for distance. So that's why these are only positive. And then you plotted your graph. Now they said 1,000 feet. So 1,000 feet is only here. Okay? Once you get to 1,000 feet, you draw your horizontal line to your graph. Once you get to your graph, you go down to the x-axis. This number is closer to 40. It's about 40. But they found it was 39. So at a height of 1,000 feet, you could see approximately 39 miles. Just by the way they use the ruler and the graph. So you'll be required to know how to make a table and how to use your table, how to use your graph to answer the question that has been asked. So do your examples, and then once you do your examples, then we'll see each other. Yes, we will see each other on Sunday.